Good evening, everyone. We are so excited for you to join us this evening. My name is Mackenzie Miller, and I'm the Marketing and Special Event Coordinator for the Admissions Office. Thanks for joining in tonight. We are in the fourth part of our Admissions Live series, and tonight we are going to be highlighting the study abroad program that is available, the off-campus study program, excuse me. And we actually have current peer advisors with us, along with two staff members that are going to moderate a panel discussion for all of you. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the course of this entire event, so feel free to put those in the chat section that is directly below this video, and we will do our best to get to every question tonight. If for some reason we're unable to get to yours tonight, we will go ahead and reach out to you individually after the event. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and turn it over to Xavier Ortiz and Gabby, and they will go ahead and take care of the rest of the evening for us tonight. So Xavier and Gabby, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mackenzie, and thank you to the admissions team for having us on tonight to talk about off-campus study. Like Mackenzie said, my name is Xavier Ortiz. I'm the off-campus study coordinator for the Center for Global Engagement. I'm also a Hope alumnus, and when I was a student here at Hope, I spent a year off campus. Part of that year, for a semester, I ended up studying in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And then as a sociology with criminal justice major, I spent the second semester in Philadelphia doing an internship at the District Attorney's Office of Philadelphia, which was fantastic. Since then, I've been working in the field of international education, where I've had the opportunity to teach abroad in Spain at a primary school for a year. And now I find myself back at Hope as the off-campus study coordinator, encouraging students to consider going for a semester, an academic year, or a summer term off campus. With that, I'll pass it along to my colleague.
Hey everyone, my name is Gabby Olaguibel. I'm one of the off-campus study advisors here at Hope College. And I'm actually also a Hope alum. So I grew up in Mexico City, Mexico, that's where I lived. And then I made my way to Holland, Michigan to start at Hope. And when I was there for my junior year, so for 2 semesters, I studied abroad in Berlin, Germany, as German was one of my majors. So great experience there. And then I left Michigan to do grad school and whatnot, but I made my way back, couldn't get enough of Hope. And so as one of the off-campus study advisors, because there's a whole team of us, I basically meet with students so that we can find the best program fit for the student, right? Based on major, personal, professional goals, all that jazz. So that's the main part of what I do. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more from our peer advisors. So these are students that we hire, and they're usually in our office space talking to students about program options, about where they're at in their application process. They're a wonderful resource, and all of them have spent a semester abroad. So I want you to hear about that. But we do want to share, one of the reasons that I love working at Hope is that I think Hope truly understands the value of off-campus study, right? When we're talking about developing global citizens, right? That is in our mission statement. I feel like Hope truly understands that off-campus study is a part of that, a part of making that happen. So currently, about 51% of Hope students study off campus in some shape or form. And Hope actually has a strategic plan in place right now to increase that percentage to 75. So I think, again, it really demonstrates how Hope values this experience and really believes in that. And so Xavier will talk a bit more about how Hope does this in a unique way, a little more of the logistics of how we do it at Hope.
Yeah, no, of course, Gabby, I appreciate you really emphasizing how Hope is making strides towards encouraging students to go off campus. In fact, we do that by offering students more than 300 programs in over 60 different countries, which I find to be, like I said, incredible, just for students who have so many options to choose from. And the way that works, the reason why we call it off-campus study, as opposed to simply saying, hey, why don't you just go study abroad, is because under that umbrella, we have international programs and domestic programs that range from semester length, academic year, and summer terms. For our summer terms, those will be a little different from our academic and semester length programs, where you can either choose to go with Hope faculty members and Hope students on a May or June term for a month, where you're taking 1 class, receiving 4 credits, or you can choose to go with one of our providers for the summer. Now, when we focus on the semester length programs, there are different types of models that we emphasize students can choose from. For example, a student can do a direct enrollment option where they will find themselves taking classes at the local university, local students, as well as students from all across the world, and living in that campus, where a student can also choose to take courses with the provider that they go with. So each provider has a center in these cities where they'll take classes with other US students and professors who actually travel to the center to teach these students the classes that they're taking. And lastly, our last model would be the hybrid program, which, just like the name implies, a mixture between both, where students can go to the local university and take classes there, but they're also taking classes with the provider. And the beauty of all these different types of models is that they will vary, they will range from what you can do, from taking classes to doing an internship, research opportunities, service learning placement, and or seminars. It all depends on what program the student chooses to pursue. And a great thing about that is that at Hope, we try to work together from their academic advisor to the registrar's office, to our off-campus advisor. Together, they talk to the student to really identify the best program for them so that they can still graduate within those 4 years. And I mean, the biggest thing to remember is that planning ahead is key. So the sooner you know that you want to go off campus, the sooner you can start planning ahead and really see what semester that would best fit for you. Because when you're going off campus, you take a full set of classes between 15 to 16 credit hours. And in those, you can take classes toward your major, you can take classes toward your minor, or you can fulfill your general education requirements. And oftentimes Gabby and I laugh because there's this myth that is going around that says you really need to know the language of that country in order to study there. And that is not the case. Most of the programs that are offered, they teach their courses in English, but that's not to say that you can't find a language immersive program. If your goal is to go to another country to really build your language skills and strengthen them to the best of your ability, you can also find programs where you'll get to really just take all of your courses in that language, from Spanish to French, German, any language you can think of, as long as the program is there, which is nice. We have programs in almost every continent. Antarctica is still a work in progress for many of the providers that we work with, but you can really find so many locations for you to choose from, which is, like I said, again, incredible. But now I'm going to pass it along to Gabby so that she can talk about the housing options as well as the finances.
Yeah, and I think just to add a little bit to what Xavier said, right? He talked about the myth of the language piece. Again, there's great language programs, but you don't, again, there are many programs without knowing the language. Maybe something I would just add is that sometimes we notice that students are very quick to assume that they couldn't do, for example, a semester because of their major or a combination of majors, or maybe because they're involved as athletes or RAs, or all these wonderful opportunities that by all means we want you to get involved with, right? Absolutely. But I would just say, don't leave it as an assumption, right? A lot of our peer advisors are involved in many things. And sometimes it really is a matter of actually coming, asking the question and exploring your options, because many times it is possible. And we just don't want people to miss out on that just because they assumed, or maybe they know somebody at another university that got told they couldn't do it because of their involvement. Again, at Hope, we really want you to be able to do this if you want to. So I would just put that on your radar to not immediately assume that. And again, this might come up in questions, but we just see this happening a lot. So don't assume, right? It probably could work out for you. As Xavier said, so housing, I'll just talk about that briefly because there's always a lot of questions about housing. Just to clarify, finding housing is a part of the program, right? So no student will leave the US without solidifying housing. So please, no worries there. Typically there are 3 options: staying with a host family, which I did in Germany. I'm still in touch with my host mom like 10 years later. So that's one option. Another option is staying at a dorm, residence hall. Another option is sharing a flat or apartment. I would say that of those 3, the most prevalent are the apartment or the host family. And again, this can vary a little bit, like Xavier said, the programs are different. So we don't have all 3 options in every single program. It depends, again, where you're looking at. But maybe you're living, for example, if you're sharing an apartment, maybe you're living with local students. So maybe you're in Spain and you have your own room, but everybody you're sharing this living space with, they're all local Spanish students studying at the local university. Maybe they're all international students from other parts of the world because you are an international student, right? And maybe it's other students from the US. So maybe your classmates or housemates are from Penn State, Albion, UT Austin, right, wherever else. So that's just to give you an idea of what all that could look like. But by all means, that is a part of the process as you're applying. So everyone will have housing, no worries there. You don't have to figure that out on your own. I also want to talk about the finances, because we definitely don't want, there to ever be questions about that. And again, the way Hope does it is also a little unique. So again, another reason I really appreciate how Hope does this. So Hope's policy is that for up to 2 semesters, you can take your financial aid package with you. So what that means is any federal aid that you receive, any Hope awarded scholarships, they still apply to that semester, even if you're out of the country, for example, right? So you are actually paying Hope tuition. So honestly, from a tuition standpoint, it is very similar to being on Hope's campus. You'll be charged the same way you always have been. In the rare event that the program's tuition is higher than Hope's, you would be responsible to pay that difference. But again, it's very uncommon. That's just if it happens. Then room and board, you would not be paying to Hope because you're not living at Hope, right? You pay that directly to the program. And to be honest, that number, that is what varies program to program, right? So I just want to clarify that. We could maybe even ask the peer advisors if that's of interest, but sometimes when you're speaking to returnees, so students that have returned from studying off campus, sometimes people feel they get mixed messaging because some people say, they often say, oh, it was cheaper than studying at Hope. And that's because of the room and board piece. It's not because of the tuition. But you will hear that quite often. Sometimes it's the same. You know, if you're living downtown London, maybe it's a little more than living in Holland, Michigan, which I think most people would understand. So, but I think in general, our providers do a really good job at keeping that price, you know, similar to being here, if not lower. So I wanted to explain that. Now for May and June terms, which Xavier explained really well, right? That's when you are gone for, they're usually 2 to 4 weeks in the month of mostly May, but there are some June. Those are not covered by financial aid, okay? It's just the way that federal aid works in the US. When you're looking at an award letter, it probably says, I'm not a financial aid officer, you should always touch base with them as well. But in general, the award letter will say awarded for the academic year. And what that means is semesters only, not summer. So just kind of how federal aid works in general in the US. That's why that's not covered. It is out of pocket. We do have scholarships available for all our programs, including May and June. But I just want to clarify that because sometimes the assumption is, well, a May and June term is a shorter period of time, therefore it's cheaper. And it's kind of the opposite actually, right? Because a semester is considered a part of your academic year and a part of your 4-year plan. It's treated as another semester, really, which is nice in that regard. So just to keep that in mind, again, I mentioned scholarships. There's scholarships for May and June. There's always more for semesters for the same reason. We offer a scholarship through our office, and luckily, you know, through the generosity of donors, there's more and more funds that we can draw from. And then all our providers offer aid as well, which is really nice. So we don't want money or finances to be the reason that somebody wouldn't do something like this. So that's why I say, don't assume, just come in, talk to one of us, and we can figure out what something could look like for you specifically. I did get one question in the chat box that I'll address really quickly. The question is about nursing, right? Is study abroad available to nursing students? That is a great question. I do think the nursing major is one of the harder ones to play around with your 4-year plans. That being said, so May and June would definitely be an option. We have seen nursing students study abroad for a semester though. So again, I think for some majors, I'll go ahead and list them now. I think nursing, education, engineering, and social work. I don't know if you know this, but when you start at Hope for your first year, you get an FYS advisor. That's your academic advisor. And they're great. But these specific departments have told our center, they've said, if somebody is in their first year and they're one of our majors and you know that they want to do a semester abroad at some point, please have them come and talk to us. You know, just introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm interested in studying, declaring in nursing, and I'm really interested in doing a semester abroad. Does it work or not? And it honestly varies by student, right? Some students come in with a lot of AP credit. Some, everybody seems to be in a different situation. So again, I would say come in and ask the question. But like Xavier mentioned, the May and June, or even the summer programs that are through a provider, in many ways it emulates a semester. It's just that it's shorter, it's over the summer. But many times you're the only Hope student doing it. So again, kind of like a mini semester, that could also be a really good option. So I would say it's possible, but you do want to, like, planning early is even more important for the majors that I mentioned, nursing being one of them. So I hope that helps answer that question. If not, definitely keep them coming, guys. Let me see. I think these other ones we can address as students speak. Popularity of programs, honestly, it varies. We kind of see different trends. Can senior students at Hope do off-campus study for the summer terms following graduation? We've definitely seen seniors walk for graduation and then do a May term. That's actually very common. Or maybe they have another semester for whatever reason, and they want to do that abroad, or sometimes seniors even do their last semester. It's most common for students to go during their junior year, but it might be before or it might be off after. This really depends on the major. So like Xavier mentioned, we talk about going to your academic advisor, right? We're the touch point person and we walk you through it, but it's very common that we're asking you to go to your department because we need to make sure that everything is working with your department and your major. So many times certain majors, for example, social work comes to mind. It's recommended that they go sometime their sophomore year, for example. So again, it'll vary based on major. But at this point, I'm really excited to have our peer advisors join us for the conversation. And we have 4 of them. We have Joey Dawson, we have Emma, we have Preet and Jillian. There we go, nice. Lovely, okay. So what we'd like to do is I have a few questions to start us off, Xavier and I do, and they will all answer it. And then again, keep questions coming that we can also, ask for our panel or answer ourselves. So I would really love to hear from all of you guys. Please introduce yourselves, say your major, your year, all that jazz. We'd love to hear, obviously, where you went and why you chose to study abroad and why that particular program or location.
Hey guys, so I'll start first. My name is Joey Dawson. I am a senior studying economics and business management. And I went to Australia in the spring of my junior year. And, I chose Australia because not only do I love the beach, and Australia is a very kind of outdoor lifestyle oriented culture, but that's also what I'm interested in as a career. I'm interested in the outdoor retail industry. And I wanted to spend this time, this unique opportunity in a place that's so far away and so hard to get to, and quite frankly, expensive to get to, when other destinations in Europe are a little closer at hand. So that's kind of the main reasons why I chose to study abroad in Australia.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll go next. I'm Emma Deloria Knope. I'm a senior, but I'm actually graduating in 3 years, so that makes me like a junior-y senior. And I am an international studies and global French studies double major, and I studied in Paris, France, the spring of my sophomore year, with CIEE in their French and Critical Studies program. So French being one of my majors, I really wanted to improve my language skills. And for me, I viewed that as I need to go and immerse myself in the French culture, of course. So I ultimately chose to go to France, and specifically I picked Paris because I wanted to be in a city very different from any other place that I've ever lived, and Paris definitely fits the bill. And so I also really wanted to travel and explore, and Paris granted me that kind of access in order to be mobile and be able to move throughout Europe.
Hey y'all, I'm Reed. I'm a a junior at Hope. I am a history and classics double major and a religion minor, and I chose to study in Rome. I have studied, Latin and Roman history for 10 years. And so, my goal was to see all that stuff in person. It's so funny, when I was kind of on the deciding factor of where I should go, it seemed like this history and classics specific program jumped out at me, and it just was like a dream come true. I learned about like Pompeii and Roman Forum and the Colosseum for like 10, 15 years of my life. And so seeing that stuff in person and like, having my textbooks come to life in front of me was like something I can't really put into words as to how like profound and how impactful that was for my life. So that's really why it's Rome, and it's honestly one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Hi everyone, I'm Jillian Chang and I'm a junior. I'm double majoring in Spanish and sociology with a minor in ministry social witness. And I studied abroad in my spring semester of my sophomore year with CIEE in Lima, Peru. And I chose to study abroad. Well, actually, one of the main reasons I came to Hope was because of how much they push global engagement and how many programs they offered through their study abroad program. And so I chose to study abroad because in the future, I want to work in diverse environments, specifically in nonprofits, organizations that work towards global justice. And I think the best way to get an accurate representation of the world and just to understand different cultures the best is to actually live amongst them and get to know people and their culture in person. And I chose Peru specifically because obviously I wanted that Spanish speaking aspect as well. And I think they have a really interesting, unique and enriching culture. And I really wanted to be fully immersed. And I think Peru was perfect for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, peer advisors. I know you always have such a great experience to share as you convey that to our Hope students. And the fact that many of you have gone to different regions from Australia, Europe, South America, I was hoping if you'd be willing to share what your academic culture was like specific to your program, as well as your housing options. If you can expand a little bit more what that looked like for you. And we'll go in the same order too. So Joey, do you want to take it away?
Absolutely. So I stayed on campus in the dorm. There were 3 different housing options. One was at a 5-star hotel in downtown in the city. One was on the campus, but it's still, it's like a kind of apartment style living. And then there was directly in the dorm. And, the cost was adjusted accordingly. But I like to tell students that the best way to meet other Australian students is by staying on campus. None of the students are going to be staying in the hotel, downtown in the city. And while that's a great experience, you're going to be missing out on the side that I think you really want to get abroad for. Classes in Australia were typically very long. So they were a couple hours. I think my longest class was 4 hours. It never really went that long though. After quite frequently after a couple hours, the professor was like, all right, get out of here, guys. We wandered out from there. But typically they're longer and they're once or twice a week. And that's just kind of the style of classes in Australia. They are very challenging. So they don't typically give out A's. So like a 80% there is like an A here. And of course, there's a grading adjustment for when you come back to the States that takes that into consideration. So it's very fair. So you don't need to stress about that. But, for Hope students who are typically overachievers and very competitive, that can be a little bit of a shock at first. But the classes were awesome. I loved what I studied over there, and I highly recommend it.
All right. Thank you, Joey. Emma?
I had an experience kind of similar to Joey's in that my university classes were also like 3.5 hours long, and we only met once a week. But the interesting thing about my program is that I actually did what's called a hybrid. And so I took 2 classes at a local university. So it was the University of Paris. And I also did 3 classes with CIEE in their institute, it's called. And all of my classes were in French, of course. And My classes at CIEE were actually more intensive based. So I could spend probably 6 to 7 hours in class every day. So it was a lot and it was very intensive, especially at the beginning as we were kind of adjusting and really getting used to speaking French the entire time. But the program kind of eased up, and towards the end, I was only in class probably 2 or 3 days out of the week. And then I had a lot of time to explore the city and explore the continent. As for my housing situation, I actually lived with a host mom. She is 74 years old, I think, and she's a widow, and she had 3 daughters who were all around the age like 35 to 40, and they would come and visit. And yeah, we just had a really awesome time. My host mom, I think one of the first things she said to me was actually, "Hi, Emma, it's so good to see you. Just so you know, I don't speak English." So that was a bit of a shocker, and it really forced me to work on my language because I really wanted to connect with this woman who links me to this country that I kind of know something about, but I really want to learn more about. So that was one of my favorite parts of my experience. And as for where we lived, I actually didn't technically live in Paris. However, where I did live it's called Neuilly-sur-Seine, which is a little kind of suburb just outside of the city. It's known as like the posh, like business kind of quarter just outside of Paris. And I was only a metro stop away from the heart of the city. So it worked pretty well for me, I'd say.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a truly fully immersive experience. And I know I've heard you speak French in the office too. So it's incredible to see how your language skills have grown exponentially through that experience. Reed?
Definitely.
Yeah, of course. So when I went, I took 5 classes. So the program I went with was IES Abroad, or the International Education of Students. And so what they do is they take a bunch of American college students from around the US and kind of ship them off, put them in a location to study with other American students. So the typical day look for me was that I would have an hour of lecture or so. And it was an English American style classroom. So I had a local like Italian professor, and they were oftentimes just brilliant, like some of the smartest and just brightest people I've ever heard profess and teach. I had all American students from my program. We had a few Italian kind of exchange students, but they were mostly just kind of like people who kind of help run things, do administrative work. And so I took Latin classes, I took Roman history classes, I took Advent of Christianity classes while I was there. And honestly, it was just so fascinating because in addition to an hour of lecture, I would have like a 2-hour, what's called a field study. So what that is that we just go basically see something in the actual city itself, based on kind of what we're learning about in the class. So if we had a lecture on something like a Roman emperor, we'd go see like, the Roman Forum, and we got to see where the stuff was happening in its context. And that was like, something that pretty much made light bulbs explode in my head all the time. It was just so wonderful for me. I went on like so many different excavations and archaeological tours all over the city over the course of my 3 months. And it was just such a magical time for me. I felt like I was a giant super nerd in my favorite city on earth. So then that was just fascinating. And in terms of housing, I lived in an apartment. I had 4 other American students with me. I had like a guy from Pennsylvania, 2 guys from California, somebody from, I think, DC. And so the 5 of us lived in this really tiny apartment. There were like 2 bedrooms. So I had to share a room with 2 other guys, and, it wasn't too bad. Everything was fine. So my house was located, I think, 2 city blocks just north of the Vatican. So I think like St. Peter's Square, St. Peter's Basilica, and the Pope were maybe like a 5-minute walk away from my apartment. And that was just like so crazy to me. Every day I'd, get out of my apartment, I'd walk to class, which is like a 15-minute walk across the Tiber River. And it was just so magical just actually being there, because I'd read about the Tiber and stuff for so long.
Absolutely. No, yeah. Reed, I know that I always enjoy the energy and the enthusiasm you have for the program that you chose to pursue, and it really shows. So thank you.
So for me, in terms of academics, I direct enrolled at a Peruvian university. So that meant I took all my classes there, had Peruvian teachers, and studied amongst Peruvian students. And because I am studying sociology and ministry and Spanish, I had a lot of my credits double up because of that language aspect. So I took a lot of sociology courses and lit courses, which helped me advance a lot as a Hope student in terms of credits wise and things like that. And the grading scale is a little different as well. In Peru, it's 1 to 20, so they don't do any like letter grades. But with my grades transferring, let's say like a 16 might be like an A here. So I had a little bit of buffer in that sense. But again, it was very challenging, and the teachers had different expectations for their students than they did here. So definitely had to learn how to adjust to that. But it also helped a lot with my Spanish speaking skills. And having Peruvian students around me was very helpful as well. I could always go to them for questions. They were very open in that sense as well. And I think something you might find common is that for a lot of study abroad students, for me, I didn't have class on Friday, so that allowed me time and space to explore Peru and have that option to travel and things like that. In terms of housing, I also lived with a host family, which was one of the highlights of my whole experience. They also didn't speak English, so that again helped a lot with my speaking abilities, understanding everything. And I lived with an older couple who have 4 children. One of them is currently living in the jungle, so never got to meet him. And then 3 of them were living at home temporarily, but they were all adults. And I also lived with a housemate who goes to Fordham University, so she's from New York, which was very helpful to have her in that situation as well. But I loved my host family. We had meals together, we had snacks together after school. I went on family trips with them, and I still keep in touch with them to this day. So I'd highly recommend that, especially for language learners, and just a way to help you feel fully immersed in your culture.
Awesome. Thank you, Jillian. Yes, that's a good point. For language learners in particular, we do tend to favor the homestay model, just because many times you're just forced to do it, right? Sink or swim, kind of like Emma. I will actually use Emma's example. I'll highlight her a little bit because admissions might have made you guys aware of this, but a lot of departments across Hope's campus have blogs. And we are one of them. If you go to blogs.hope.edu, there's a bunch of departments there. I'm happy to say the off-campus study one is one of the featured ones. Yeah. And Emma actually blogged for us. So it's really cool to, she writes about her host family. She writes about the language component, right? Which her and Jillian kind of have in common. So I definitely encourage you to go to the blog as well, because you get to read more about what students are writing about. We do have a question for Reed specifically, and I'll read it out loud. So does Hope offer Italian? And we actually don't offer Italian. It says, and if not, are you able to study Italian while studying abroad in Rome? And I'd love for Reed to explain what that looks like a little bit, but I will say, kind of like Xavier mentioned, all the programs that are in a country where English is not the main language spoken, but your classes are in English, they typically offer, if not require, a language course, right? So maybe you're in Prague, you're studying in Prague, you're gonna be required to, and if you're not required, I highly recommend that you take it anyway as an advisor, just like, the language that they offer there, 101, right? We've had students do that in Italy, in Germany, just so you can learn to navigate public transportation, order off a menu, this type of thing. But Reed, what did that look like for you in terms of the language?
Oh man, yeah. So we had required Italian. That was one of the classes we were required to take. They placed everybody in kind of a class based on their proficiency level. And even though I'd taken Latin for a while, I had no Italian experience. So I took like Italian 101 or something like that. And it was kind of fun. My professor was this really chill, kind of not older woman, but she had a couple of kids. And so we had class Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from like 4:45 to 5:30, 4:45 to 6. And that's the reason why it's so late, is because, in Italy, you don't really eat dinner until around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the evening. So that was still kind of prime class time for them. And so, yeah, so I really enjoyed that. I kind of did a little bit of Duolingo going in, but then I realized that I wanted to like be kind of like immersed, because even though I went for like Roman history and like ancient Roman classics, I still figured, you know, I'm in Italy, might as well like order and learn Italian. So I learned enough, and I still retain enough just to order off of like a menu, since, you know, food is such a huge part of Italian cuisine and culture. And so that was like the stuff I still remember. But, you know, Hope doesn't offer Italian, but we had to take it when I was there, and I loved it. I really enjoyed the class.
Thank you. Yeah, again, because you all went to different places, you have all these different experiences to speak into. Let me see. I'd really like you guys to talk now about, like, if I were to ask you, what is something that surprised you about yourself, or something that you learned about yourself throughout this semester experience? What would that be? And we'll start with Joey again.
Yeah. So I learned that I really had no idea how to travel. So I didn't know how to really plan a trip and figure out all the logistics and handle that, which was something I learned and got comfortable with in Australia. I had decided before going over there that I wanted to spend time traveling to different parts of Australia and also get to New Zealand. So that took planning. And it's just something that you get comfortable with. And that was just a really cool way in which I became more independent by being abroad and relying on myself to do that. And it didn't always turn out. That's something that you also learn, is that your adventures abroad, things will go wrong, but how you learn to handle those and adjust your actions and learn how to go on the fly is all part of, you know, growing as a person, becoming more independent and stronger. So that was a part of my study abroad experience that I really, looking back on, I'm really glad I had.
Thank you, Joey. Really good.
For me, I was a little surprised about how much the little things can just like make your day and can just like really like brighten up your life a little bit. I speak very fondly about my host mother because I adore her and she is fantastic. And I speak a lot about the meals that she and I had because they were very special to me. She and I would have breakfast and dinner together almost every day, probably about an hour to an hour and a half, even past like when we had finished eating. And we would just like sit and talk. And at the beginning, she would do most of the talking because I was still like trying to figure out what she said 3 sentences ago. But towards the end, I was able to kind of converse back with her, and we would often listen to the radio or like go on walks. And it was just really incredible how much something so small can really change a whole experience. I don't think my experience in Paris would have been what it was, or would have been nearly as, in my eyes, successful had I not had the host mom that I did. And even just going out and exploring the city on your own, just walking around and taking in all the sights and smells. If you've ever smelled a bakery, a French bakery at 6 a.m, it is heavenly. And just those little things, they all kind of build up and really make just such an incredible and unique experience. So that really surprised me very pleasantly, though.
Thanks.
Oh, Hannah, that's so wonderful. I don't know if I can follow up to that. No, that was just so great. I really loved hearing that. No, so something that surprised me is how much I love just like traveling solo. And kind of what I mean by that is when I was in the process of thinking about my study abroad experience, I said, oh, hey, you might find some friends, go travel a bunch of places, do a bunch of things that I'd be really interested in. But I think early on, I kind of realized that some of the interests I had, didn't really, not like didn't line up with other people, but I just realized that I had a lot of opportunities to go on a lot of solo traveling. And I realized that every time I thought about something I wanted to go to, I took advantage of that, and it turned out to be like really amazing. So I'll give a couple of examples. I am a huge World War II like super nerd. I love studying like World War II and D-Day, and so I had the opportunity to go on a week-long trip to Normandy and do like a 5-day tour of the D-Day battlefield, like all 5 beaches and stuff. And so that was just like so incredible for me, because I got to go on a solo trip, and I spent a lot of really wonderful time. Met some like this really amazing older French woman and her son, who's also a World War II nerd. And so I just love that. I didn't really even realize that I had that aspect of myself where I can just go and travel to a place I want to go to. And, it's nice to go like with people. It's nice to have people and have travel companions. But at the end of the day, if I, want to go somewhere and I know, I just feel like a deep conviction to go, then, not being afraid to like follow that intense passion, I think was something that was really like, I really appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you, Reed.
Yeah, for me, I think this is something common you'd find among a lot of students who've studied abroad, but I think it's a really good thing, is how much confidence I grew after studying abroad. And I think it's just a big testament, like my story is a big testament to that, because my whole life I kind of struggled with confidence and self-esteem, as a lot of young people do. But after this opportunity and throughout it, I started to notice that I would start initiating conversations with Peruvian students, had to go out of my way to make plans or create travel plans for my friends and I, and or travel on my own and do quick problem solving and things like that in certain situations. And I think that helped a lot in gaining my self-confidence and using that moving forward in terms of building relationships with people and knowing how to use interpersonal skills and things like that, especially in the workforce that I want to go into, and things like that. So I think what surprised me about myself was how much confidence I grew.
Jillian, so what do you want to get into? I'm going to just ask you that follow-up question.
So I would love to work in nonprofit organizations in the future, either for refugees, human trafficking, or just empowering youth, either in an Asian context or Latin American context. So I think that would require a lot of interpersonal skills and working with people and being able to listen well and understand people's stories and things like that. So that's kind of why I brought it up.
Absolutely. I know when Gabby and I lead our orientation for students who are going off campus, we touch on many skills that students already possess, but strengthen when they go off campus, whether it be an international or domestic program. So by the sound of it, it sounds like all of you in one way or another grew in that aspect. And now it's something that you can then carry with you in the professional setting. So it's so great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I will say that's one of my favorite parts of my job. We love obviously meeting students ahead of time. Everyone's excited. But when students return, and especially for a semester, there were ups, there were highs, and there were some downs, right? There's those challenging moments as well. But it's really cool to see the growth and to see, like Jillian was saying, just the growth in confidence, independence that Joey mentioned. I mean, to see students return with that spark, that expanded horizon, there's nothing quite like that. So it's always what we need to like, okay, this is why we do it. This is why we're in this business of, again, global citizens. So really, really cool. Thank you for sharing. We do have a couple more questions. Do you offer science-based study abroad opportunities? And I really like that question because, as you can see here, these are just 4 students, very different types of experiences, right? You can do programs where maybe you're doing more of your gen eds. Obviously, even if you're a science student, sometimes science students want to do that, but we really try to encourage students to think of study abroad or off campus as a way of expanding your whole curriculum, right? A way of giving you that edge and to learn even more of your field, right? A different perspective you get to speak to and learn from experts in the area, but in another context, right? And I think as study abroad goes and becomes more and more popular and desirable, people want it on their resumes. to get into grad school, med school, get that job, many different options. There are more and more programs geared to a specific discipline, science being one of them, right? So again, I think it depends exactly on what you're looking for. For example, there are programs that are very geared toward sustainability, environmental issues, stuff like that, right? There's many programs, I don't know them all in my head, but there's some in Ecuador, in Costa Rica, that's very focused on biology and the natural environment that you're in. We did have a blogger. Again, I think that's why the blog is great. When you go to the blog, it'll have some students featured on there, but there's a search bar as well. And so you can access all the bloggers we've ever had. So if you type in biology, a lot of things will come up. There'll be Australia will come up, New Zealand will come up. Like for geology students, a context like Iceland or New Zealand could be very interesting, right? If that's what you're looking at. So again, I guess it kind of depends on what type of science, but again, there's those two ways of going about it. You could do gen eds or you could dive more into your field. And we think it's nice to at least do one class toward your major. I know Joey did gen eds, but then he also took a class or two toward his econ and business majors. Someone asked about Australia specifically, and the thing is, we partner with very large universities in Australia, so you have access to, I mean, almost any discipline could be studied there. We've had engineering students take engineering classes there. We've had, so really the possibilities are endless, I'm going to say, when you're looking at Australia or New Zealand, which is nice. So if you're interested in Australia, regardless of the major you want to do, you can find the classes there. So that's a good place to be interested in. Let's see. Oh, it's great to see all these questions coming in, guys. If you know you want to study abroad, how does the whole roommate situation go back at Hope? Really great question. Joey was even an RA. But again, because many students are studying off campus, some students go in the fall, some students go in the spring, you just need to let housing know, right? So you're not going to have to pay housing at Hope to hold your spot or anything like that. Sometimes we get that question, but you do want to have that conversation early on. Sometimes students just find somebody to like switch their spot in housing, if that makes sense, right? They'll go abroad in the fall, then you return, so there's definitely a way to go about that. You just need to, have the conversation with housing and go from there. Great question for sure. I think we're caught up with our questions. That makes me feel so good.
And as we're nearing kind of like the end of the session, there is one more question that I'd like to ask all our peer advisors, and that is, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about, what is some advice that you would give to all the students who are currently listening, the prospective students, about off-campus study, really to give them that, how do I best put it, that encouragement to consider this as an option in their academic journey?
I don't need any time. So
I'll take it away, Jerry.
I would advise for you to try and save some money spending wise now. And if you're comfortable with it, well, even if you're not comfortable with it, but if you have the ability, travel as much as you can and do as many different experiences as you can. So do things that you wouldn't get to do back in the US, do things that scare you, do things that you think are crazy and that you never expected yourself to do, because this is your time to do it. And if you have the funds to do it, don't worry about, oh, well, I'm going to get back and I'm not going to have, a lot of money. You can make that back. You can get a job when you get back. You'll have the rest of your life to save and to make money. But this time specifically, when you're abroad in this location and your job, like your duty, like your reason for being there is to learn and to experience the country and the culture. Make the most of it. So yeah, that's my advice.
All right, thanks. Who else would like to share? Emma?
I got something. All right. So I think I would definitely say that you should go into everything with an open mind. Yes, do ask for advice, but don't hold on to it with a death grip, because ultimately someone else's experience is never going to be even remotely the same as yours. I would not tell people that they're going to have an amazing, incredible, life-changing experience in Paris, because they might not. They might think things very differently, and they might have a different host mom or not be in the same program and not have the stars align the exact same way that they did for me. So yes, listen to other people and do really be open-minded to hearing about their experiences, but also don't let those expectations get in the way of your own experience. You know, your experience is never going to be the same as anybody else's. So just go out there and live it for yourself.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah,
Read.
yeah, I can talk next. No, when Gabby was talking about, you know, any advice, or Xavier was talking about any advice, I just had a thought pop into my head, and you know, I would say just go for it. The advice I'd give to somebody who's interested in studying abroad is to ask them a question of, you know, when are you going to have an opportunity to do this kind of thing again? You have an opportunity to live in a foreign country for up to 4 months. You have an opportunity, you know, what's going to be the cheapest in your whole life to actually spend time more than like a week or so in a place you've never been. And honestly, like if you have any kind of like, you know, inkling or interest in doing that, then definitely pursue it, because now we're young, you know, we can afford to do that. You know, we're getting like financial aid to come with us. So I just want to say, you know, when are you going to have another opportunity in your lifetime to do something like this? And, you know, I kind of like, we'll talk about, you know, one more thing. I know like some people will be held back when they say, oh, my boyfriend or my girlfriend are kind of like, I'm in a relationship, I don't want to like leave that. But, you know, that was actually me. When I went to Rome, I had started dating my girlfriend about 2 months before. And so doing long distance was really hard. I just had a lot of pain. It was like really difficult. And honestly, there were some times when I just felt defeated, but I'd still make the same decision 100 times out of 100. Because even though, you know, it was tough at times, I still really, I just still like grew so much more. And my girlfriend and I are still together. So we, you know, that wasn't like anything really bad for us. You know, it was just something we had to deal with. But no, like even with like long distance, it still can work out. And I'm not saying it's going to do that all the time, but you know, even if you're in a relationship, I would still say, you know, when you're going to have an opportunity to do something like this again in your life.
All right, yeah. And Jillian.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what all three of them said, and would just like to echo all of that.
Yeah.
That I think it's really easy to compare your experiences, and it's really easy to choose not to go because of what you might be missing out on at Hope. And I think just echoing what Emma said is to really think about how you're going to use this experience for yourself, and you're going to experience so much growth in this time. And while that can be scary, it's such a good thing. And you'll build such cool, lasting, and unique relationships with people. You'll be able to have all these different experiences and conversations with that you otherwise wouldn't have if you stayed at Hope during that one semester, or if you didn't go that one summer, or something like that. And when you are abroad, advice I would give you during that time is to, again, it's easy to compare your experiences with other people, but to really just focus on living in the present and what's put in front of you in that moment. And again, yeah, just make the most of your experience, because it's been one of the best things in my life so far, and the most fruitful things for me. So I would highly, highly recommend studying.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate all of you sharing your advice to the audience that tuned in tonight. And one more thing that I'd like to reiterate actually, is the importance of planning ahead, because planning ahead is key. As you're thinking about going off campus, everyone's off-campus study experience will be different. For some students, a semester might be too long and they're not sure if they want to commit to that. So our summer term works great to give you that preview, to immerse yourself in a different culture before you make that decision to go for a longer period of time. And if or when you find yourself on Hope's campus, we are in the Martha Miller Center, where you'll be able to get much more information regarding off-campus study.
Yes, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We had a few more questions, but I think because of time, we'll just ask you to connect with your admissions folks and they will loop us right back in. There are programs in the US. I realize we weren't able to showcase those, but they're not with other universities within the US. They are basically internship opportunities where for the whole semester or summer, you are basically working, you're interning full time and then just taking like a seminar to go along with that. So if you wanted to take classes at another university, that would really be seen more as transfer credit, and it would be seen as you're taking a semester away from Hope. So that's not necessarily off campus, what we consider off campus, but for domestic programs, they're mainly internship opportunities. They are fantastic. And we are happy to connect with you further. Just talk to your admissions rep and we are more than happy. And like Xavier said, just starting early, right? We had a question about that as well. So by all means, if you really want to do this, you don't even need to know where. Really, we want to get the conversation started so we can plan when and then go from there. So thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to connecting with you guys. Thank you, Jillian, Reed, Emma, and Joey. You guys are fantastic. And thank you, admissions, for hosting this. It's been really great.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to chat with everybody, and you guys did wonderful. So thank you again. And like Gabby and Xavier mentioned, if you guys do have any follow-up questions after this, please feel free to reach out to your admissions rep or anything just about Hope in general. Feel free to reach out to them as well. Stay tuned and come in tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. We will actually be hosting our Parents Council panel. So that's an opportunity to hear from current Hope parents and their students and what their experiences were like. So join in 7 o'clock tomorrow night, same place. And then mark your calendars for next week as well. On Monday, we have our Dutch Blitz event. So anybody that is going to be a part of the class of 2024 and is interested in meeting their classmates, please sign up. This is an event that's not going to be live streamed on YouTube. This is actually a separate event. So if you're still interested in participating, reach out to your rep. They'll get you signed up today and you'll receive additional information afterwards. And then on Tuesday, we are hosting an athletics panel. You'll hear from coaches along with a few current student athletes as well. And then on Wednesday, we'll end with a campus ministries panel discussion. We'll hear from the staff into the department along with other students that are taking advantage of opportunities that are available to them on campus. We are so thankful that you joined us tonight. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Gracias. Adios.
Bye.